The sun hung low over the marina, pouring melted gold over the still water. The only sound was the soft tap of sail lines against aluminum masts, the distant hum of a highway, and the occasional cry of a gull. It was peaceful, almost eerily so. Then the peace shattered. "Marcus, your boat is gone." The voice on the phone trembled. Marcus Reed stepped out of the airport terminal, the Florida heat pressing against him as he stopped dead in his tracks. Suitcase rolling behind him. He pressed the phone tighter to his ear. "What do you mean, gone?" he asked slowly. "Gone," repeated his neighbor, Tom. "I'm standing at your slip right now. The Serenity isn't here." Marcus swallowed hard. "Tom, I locked her before I left. Triple-checked. The HOA has the gate code, but nobody else. Did you ask security?" "Yes," Tom said. "That's why I called. They said, she's out. Someone signed her out. Said they had permission from the HOA president." Marcus blinked. "Signed. Her. Out." "Yes. Who?" There was a pause. The wind picked up in the background of the call, carrying the faint clanging of rigging. "Caroline." Marcus closed his eyes. Caroline Whitfield, HOA president of the Bayshore Lakes Marina community. Blonde, polished, always smiling with that particular tightness that never reached her eyes whenever she spoke to Marcus. She was known for enforcing minor rules with brutal precision. No charcoal grills on balconies, no towels over railings, no music after 9 p.m. "And she took my boat?" Marcus said, voice low. She said you gave permission." Tom answered. "But I know you didn't, so I called." Marcus stared out past the taxi lane at nothing, his heart pounding, anger and disbelief fighting for space in his chest. "I'll call you back," Marcus said. Hanging up, he stood there for a moment in silence, his reflection distorted in the airport's glass doors. He thought about the Serenity, the 28-foot white and navy powerboat he'd saved for, sacrificed for, dreamed about since he was a kid. Growing up in a cramped apartment in Atlanta, he used to scribble pictures of boats on the back of old homework sheets, imagining the day he'd stand at a helm with the world opening up before him. Now, someone had just taken his dream out for a joyride, and that someone was the same woman who once emailed him a 3-paragraph warning for leaving his recycling bin out an extra morning. He grabbed his suitcase handle and moved mechanically toward the pickup area, his mind already racing. He dialed Caroline. Straight to voicemail. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. He opened his messages and saw an email from the HOA address, time-stamped that morning. "Dear Mr. Reed, routine inspection of dock facilities will be conducted today. Access to your slip may be required. No action from you is necessary. Regards, Bayshore Lakes HOA." His jaw clenched. "Routine inspection, huh?" he muttered. As he slid into the back of a waiting rideshare, his phone buzzed again. A text from Tom came in. "Tom, bro, I think they're throwing a party on your boat." Marcus's fingers stiffened over the screen. "Marcus, where? How do you know?" He watched the typing indicator flash. "Tom, HOA IG story. Check it." Marcus went to Instagram, fingers moving fast, and searched the Bayshore Lakes HOA account. The most recent story showed a shaky video of a group of mostly white homeowners, laughing, glasses raised, music thumping faintly over the sound of water. The video panned over a familiar navy and white hull. The Serenity, his boat. On the story, a caption, "HOA board summer mixer, nothing like good neighbors and good water. Clinking glasses sailboat." Marcus's heart pounded in his ears. He zoomed in on the face at the center of the frame. Caroline, in oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat, holding a champagne flute, grinning like she owned the ocean. The rideshare driver, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, glanced at him in the rear-view mirror. "You okay back there?" she asked. Marcus stared at the video again, memorizing every detail, the extra coolers on board, the people dancing on his deck, the HOA banner draped over the rail. He almost didn't hear the driver. "No," he said quietly, "but I will be." He felt the old anger rise in him, not hot and irrational, but cold and steady. He'd been here before in different forms, being followed around a store, being asked if he really lived in this neighborhood, having a neighbor call security because he was lingering too long at the mailboxes. Now his own HOA had treated his boat like community property, like a prop for their party, like his ownership of it, of anything, was somehow negotiable. His phone rang again. Tom, Marcus answered. Try Facebook, Tom said without preamble. Someone tagged the HOA. There's more. Marcus opened the app and scrolled, clicking on a public post from Bayshore Lake Social Committee. There was a clear photo of the Serenity out on the open water, a small crowd on board, Caroline standing at the helm like she was captain, her hand on the wheel. His wheel. Unbelievable, Marcus breathed. Their boat day, Tom said bitterly. On your boat. Are you still at the marina? Marcus asked. Yes, I'm at Dock C. Your slip is empty. I've got my binoculars, though. I can see them way out by the inlet. Take a picture of the empty slip, Marcus said. Time-stamped. And if you can zoom on them, get photos too. You think this is going to end in court? Tom asked. Marcus stared at the photo of his boat on someone else's timeline. I think, Marcus said slowly, it's going to end with the truth in the open. All of it. As the car pulled away from the airport, Marcus opened his email and began composing a message. Subject: unauthorized use of my boat. He didn't know that while he typed, out on the water, Caroline was laughing under the sun, the wind lifting her hair, feeling untouchable. She also didn't know that a Coast Guard cutter was already moving silently in her direction, a set of sharp young eyes on board having just noticed something that didn't add up. And when blue lights flashed over the waves and a loudspeaker boomed across the water, everything was about to change, for her, for Marcus, and for everyone in Bayshore Lakes. The ride from the airport had just begun, and so had the storm. Caroline, this is insane, a woman shouted over the music, her voice bright with champagne and sun. You didn't tell us you had a boat like this. Caroline's laugh floated over the water. Technically, I don't, she said, tapping the wheel with one manicured finger. The community does. The crowd laughed, but one man in a faded visor frowned. I thought you said it was one of the owner's boats, he said. What was his name again? Marcus, she said casually, eyes on the distant line where the sea met the sky. He's not even in town. And honestly, he should be grateful. We're showcasing the marina, giving the community life. It's good for property values. Still, the man in the visor said, Did he say it was okay? Caroline's jaw tightened just for a second. Look, she said, leaning back as if the answer were obvious. He never actually said no, and as HOA president, I have authority over the docks for community events. There's a lot of flexibility in the bylaws. Nobody noticed the way she sidestepped the question. Music boomed from a portable speaker. Glasses clinked. The HOA treasurer snapped selfies, angling the camera to include the small American flag fluttering at the stern. If we put this on our website, we're going to get so many new buyers, another board member said. Bayshore Lakes, where community is family and the water is ours. Unseen in the water behind them, a Coast Guard cutter cut through the waves, steady and fast. On the bridge of the cutter, Petty Officer Javier Morales narrowed his eyes at the boat in the distance. He raised binoculars to his face. Got something? His partner, Davis, asked. Morales frowned. That registration number, he said. Didn't we get an alert about that vessel tagged in some system earlier today? Maybe a dock note. Davis turned to the console and typed, the display glowing against the bright deck. Serenity, Bay County registration, he murmured. Owner, Marcus Reed. Reported, not stolen, but there's a note from Marina Security. Owner contacted neighbor reporting concern about potential unauthorized use by HOA. Morales nodded slowly. And that was about, he checked the time, 40 minutes ago. Davis whistled softly. Well, look at that. And now it's out here, full of people, no sign of the reported owner. Let's go say hello, Morales said. The cutter changed direction with a smooth, practiced turn, back on the Serenity. Caroline didn't notice the approaching vessel until a shadow slipped over the water beside them. Someone's voice cut through the chatter. Caroline? I think that's the Coast Guard. Caroline glanced over her sunglasses, then stiffened as she saw the white hull, the bold letters, the flashing blue lights. The music suddenly seemed too loud. "Turn that down," she snapped, and someone scrambled to obey. A loudspeaker crackled. "White and Navy sport vessel, registration FL 5123BR. This is the United States Coast Guard. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded." The words hung in the sunlit air like a threat. Caroline forced a smile. "It's fine," she said quickly, shrugging. "Routine. They do checks all the time." Her eyes darted to the controls. She fumbled slightly as she cut the throttle, her fingers no longer as steady. The party atmosphere vanished. The air felt heavier now, thick with unease. Glasses were set down. People adjusted hats and shirts, sitting straighter. 2 Coast Guard officers stepped onto the swim platform with efficient movements. Morales nodded politely. "Good afternoon, folks," he said. "Mind if we come aboard?" "Sure," Caroline said, her smile too bright. "Of course." They climbed up, their expressions calm but serious. "Ma'am, are you the captain of this vessel?" Morales asked. "Yes, I'm operating her today," Caroline said, smoothing her dress as if that could smooth reality. "Can I see your ID and vessel registration?" he asked. Caroline hesitated a second too long. "I don't have it on me," she said. "It's back at the dock. But it's fine. This is a community event. I'm the HOA president. The owner is a friend." "A friend," Morales repeated, watching her face. "And his name?" "Marcus," she said. "Marcus Reed." "Did Mr. Reed give you permission to use his vessel today?" he asked. Her smile faltered. "Well, he's out of town," she said. "But as HOA president, I have authority to use dock vessels for community purposes when it's—" Davis cut in, his voice mild but edged. "Ma'am, that's not how vessel ownership works." Someone on the boat coughed awkwardly. A woman muttered, "I'm going to sit down," and did so quickly. Morales continued. "We have a note on this vessel. The owner's neighbor reported potential unauthorized use. We're obligated to verify that the boat is being operated with the owner's consent." Caroline's heart thudded. "This is ridiculous," she said. "He's overreacting. He's always so sensitive about everything." The word sensitive hung in the air like something sour. Morales' eyes sharpened, hearing everything she didn't say out loud. "Do you have any proof that Mr. Reed allowed this use?" he asked. "Text messages, emails?" She swallowed. "He never said I couldn't," she said. "We sent an email to his address this morning about dock inspections." "That's not consent," Morales said. Caroline's cheeks flushed. "Listen," she snapped. "I am the president of the Bayshore Lakes HOA. I oversee this marina. These are my people. We have every right to enjoy the amenities we—" "Ma'am," Morales interrupted, his tone still calm but firmer now. "This boat is legally registered to one person. HOA rules don't override state law. You are operating someone else's vessel without written permission. That could qualify as unauthorized use, possibly even theft, depending on the owner's statement." A murmur swept through the crowd. "Did he say that?" someone whispered. "Is this going to be on the news?" another said, panicked. Caroline felt her control slipping. "This is just a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "We're neighbors. This is a misunderstanding." "Maybe," Morales said. "We're going to clear that up. For now, I'm going to ask everyone to remain calm and stay seated. We're going to contact the owner directly." He held up a small radio mic. "Station, this is Cutter Bravo 3. We're aboard the vessel Serenity. FL 5123BR. Request contact number for registered owner Marcus Reed." As the Coast Guard relayed information back and forth, Caroline's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced down and saw his name on the caller ID. Marcus. Her stomach dropped. She stared at the screen, her world shrinking to that one glowing word. She declined the call. Morales watched the thumb move. "Was that Mr. Reed?" he asked quietly. She forced a laugh. "No, telemarketer." His expression did not change, but something in his eyes cooled. His radio crackled. "Cutter Bravo 3, we have contact info for owner. Transmitting now." He wrote down a number, then lifted his phone and dialed. On the other side of the call, in the back of a rideshare car inching down the highway from the airport, Marcus's phone lit up with an unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Mr. Reed?" Came a professional voice. "This is Petty Officer Morales with the United States Coast Guard. I'm currently aboard your vessel." Marcus's grip tightened. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice dark. "We're conducting a compliance check and confirming authorization for use of your boat," Morales said. "There's a Ms. Caroline Whitfield here who states she is the HOA president and that you allowed her to use your vessel for a community event. Can you confirm that?" Marcus stared out the window, the world blurring past. He saw himself as a kid, staring at boats he could never touch. He saw himself the day he signed the title for Serenity, hands trembling with pride. He saw Caroline's eyes the first time she looked him up and down at an HOA meeting, as if weighing how he fit in here. He took a breath. "No," he said clearly. "I did not give anyone permission to use my boat. Not verbally, not in writing. Nobody. She is there without my consent." On the water, Morales held his phone to his ear, listening. "Understood," he said. "For your awareness, we have multiple passengers aboard and Ms. Whitfield at the helm. We'll proceed per protocol. We may need a written statement from you later today." "You'll have it," Marcus said. "Please keep my boat safe. And I'd like a full report of everything that happens." "You'll get it," Morales replied. "We'll be in touch again soon, Mr. Reed. For now, I recommend contacting your marina security and HOA directly." As Morales ended the call, the eyes of everyone on the Serenity shifted to him, heavy with dread. "Well," Caroline demanded, her voice cracking. Morales looked at her for a long moment. "Ms. Whitfield," he said evenly, "the owner has just stated on record that you do not have a permission to use this vessel." The silence hit harder than any wave. Behind them, on shore, Tom snapped another photo of the empty slip, his gut telling him that things were about to explode. And in the back of that rideshare, Marcus closed his eyes, pressing his fingers against his forehead, mentally rearranging his entire life around the battle he knew was coming. Caroline opened her mouth to protest, to spin, to bend reality the way she'd done in board meetings and emails for years. Then Morales spoke again. "Ma'am, at this time, you're operating a vessel without owner authorization. I'm going to ask you to step away from the helm." Caroline's hand clenched around the wheel. For the first time, she looked genuinely afraid. "Step away from the helm, ma'am." The words echoed in Caroline's head like a gavel. Everyone on board watched, eyes wide, some in covert fascination, others in genuine discomfort. "This is absurd," Caroline said, refusing to move. "You're making a scene in front of my community." "Your community?" Morales repeated. "This is Mr. Reed's vessel. For now, I need you to comply." There was a long, tense pause. Then the man in the visor cleared his throat. "Caroline," he said gently, "maybe just step back. Let them do their job." She shot him a glare. "Greg, whose side are you on?" "The law's," he said. "And, to be honest, this doesn't look good." Whispers flitted across the deck. "Is this illegal? I thought it was her boat." "Wait, whose is it then?" Morales said nothing, letting the weight of the moment settle. This wasn't just about a boat. He could feel it, an imbalance that had been tilted for a long time, finally being nudged toward level, 1 inch at a time. Caroline inhaled sharply, then exhaled through her nose. Without another word, she let go of the wheel and stepped aside, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "Thank you," Morales said. He turned to Davis. "Shut the engines and secure the vessel. We'll escort them back to the marina." Davis moved quickly, his hands sure and practiced. Caroline tried again, clinging to whatever slivers of control she could. "Petty Officer Morales, is it? Listen, we can settle this without making it official," she said. "I can call Marcus, explain this was just miscommunication. There's no reason to." Morales shook his head slowly. "We already spoke to Mr. Reed. He was very clear. Our body cameras and radio recordings will support this interaction. Any settlement is between you and him, but as far as we're concerned, this situation is documented. Body cameras? Someone repeated nervously. You're recording this? Another voice said, pitch rising. Yes, Morales said simply. For everyone's protection. Caroline's heart lurched. She glanced around to faces around her. Neighbors, board members, people who'd voted for her, backed her. People whose complaints she'd weaponized when it suited her and soothed when it didn't. Now, they were looking at her like she was the problem. This is out of proportion, she said. We're just having a little fun. A woman on the port side, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. Fun, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. You told us this was your friend's boat, that he wouldn't mind. You didn't say the Coast Guard might show up and we'd all be part of whatever this is. I didn't know they'd. Did you have permission or not? The woman pressed. A simple yes or no. The question sliced through the warm air. Caroline opened her mouth, closed it. I'm the HOA president, she said weakly. The dock is part of common property. It's complicated. That's not a yes, the woman replied flatly. On the other side of the boat, a younger man took out his phone, thumbs flying across the screen. Dude, don't post this, someone hissed. I'm not posting, he whispered. I'm just texting my wife. If this ends up in some legal mess, I'm not going down as random guy on stolen boat. Stop saying stolen. Caroline snapped. Nobody corrected him. The Coast Guard cutter began to move, guiding the Serenity back toward the marina. The sun glinted off the water, off the distant line of condos and palm trees and carefully manicured lawns. As they approached the dock, a small crowd had gathered. Neighbors, curious onlookers, a security guard, Tom with his binoculars lowered now, phone in hand. Is that the HOA board? Someone on the pier whispered. Are they being escorted in? Those are Coast Guard lights, right? Phones lifted, cameras zoomed. Caroline felt heat crawling up her neck. She thought of the HOA newsletter, the one she'd proudly sent out last month that read, Our community holds itself to the highest standards of integrity. Morales turned to the group. All right, folks, he said calmly. We're going to disembark in an orderly fashion. You're free to go about your day, but we strongly recommend you remain available in case law enforcement or the vessel owner needs statements. Are we in trouble? A man at the back asked nervously. Morales considered. I'm not here to make that determination, he said, but I would suggest you be honest about what you knew and didn't know. He looked back at Caroline. Especially you, ma'am. The Serenity eased into her slip, lines tossed and tied. The hollow slap of the fenders against the dock rang in Marcus's mind, even though he was still 5 minutes away. The rideshare car stuck behind a slow-moving truck. Tom moved closer, recording as discreetly as he could without hiding it. The first passenger stepped off, heads down, avoiding eye contact. Some removed their HOA name badges hastily, shoving them into pockets. Hey, what happened out there? Someone asked. Ask your president. One of the board members muttered, brushing past. Caroline finally stepped off the boat, her heels clicking on the dock, a sound that normally meant authority but now sounded brittle. She stopped when she saw Tom. What are you doing? She demanded. Documenting, he said quietly. For Marcus. He asked me to keep an eye on his slip. I didn't expect all this. You can't film me without my permission, she snapped. In public space, actually he can, Morales said as he disembarked behind her. And for what it's worth, I'm documenting too. He gestured to his chest camera. Caroline swallowed, the walls closing in. Is there going to be a report? She asked, voice small for the first time. Yes, Morales said. You'll probably hear from local law enforcement or attorneys if the owner decides to pursue this further. So that's it, she said. You embarrass me in front of my community and just leave? Morales looked at her steadily. I didn't embarrass you, ma'am, he said. Your actions did. I just turned the lights on. He gave a brief nod to Tom. Mr. Reed is lucky to have a neighbor watching out for him. Then he turned, stepping back onto the cutter as it slowly pulled away, leaving behind a wake of ripples that rocked the docks. Caroline stood there, breathing hard, feeling eyes on her from every direction. For the first time in a long time, she felt the fragile nature of power when it's built on people's silence. Her phone buzzed again. She looked down. A new email notification appeared from Marcus Reed. Subject line, tonight. We talk, or my lawyer does. Her vision swam for a moment. All around her, the carefully polished facade of control she built over years, approval letters, violation notices, policy votes, began to crack. Back in the rideshare, Marcus finally saw the marina coming into view through the windshield. The driver glanced at the flashing lights fading in the distance and then at him. Looks like something happened down there, she said. Yeah, he replied softly. Something did. He felt no joy, just a heavy, steady resolve. He was tired of pretending, tired of shrinking himself to fit into a space that still questioned whether he deserved to be there. The driver pulled up to the marina entrance. You want me to wait? She asked. He shook his head. No, this is my stop. He stepped out into the thick, humid air and walked toward the docks, rolling his suitcase behind him, both hands free in case he needed them. Ahead, he could see the Serenity back in her slip, rocking gently. And in front of her stood Caroline, alone now, staring at her phone, shoulders tense. Marcus's footsteps echoed on the wooden planks as he approached, each step feeling like a line being drawn. The crowd quieted as he neared. Some stepped back. Others leaned in. Is that him? That's the owner? He seemed calm. Calm wasn't the right word. Focus was. Caroline finally looked up, their eyes locking for the first time since this began. Marcus, He stopped at the edge of the slip, the Serenity floating between them like a wounded witness. You took my boat, he said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. Caroline opened and closed her mouth, searching for the right combination of words that had always worked before. We were going to talk to you, she said. It was a last-minute community event, and you weren't answering emails, and I assumed... You assumed my silence was consent, he said. She flinched. All this, he gestured around, at the dock, at the curious faces, at the retreating Coast Guard cutter, because you assumed my ownership didn't really count the same way. That's not what I... Isn't it? He asked quietly. The air pulsed with tension. Look, Marcus, she said, ill-prepared but pressing on. You have to understand how this looks. We're all neighbors. We contribute to the HOA, the docks, the marina. They're part of collective life. This can be a misunderstanding we handle internally. No need for lawyers or reports or consequences, he finished. She swallowed, saying nothing. A seagull screeched overhead, circling. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, his voice gaining a quiet steel. You and I are going to have a conversation, not as HOA president and owner, as a woman who thought she could take what's mine and the man you did it to. Her eyes flashed. Are you threatening me? No, he said. I'm promising you clarity. He took a step closer, his gaze unwavering. And after that, he said, we'll see how much of the community still thinks what you did today was just a misunderstanding. Before she could respond, a voice called out from behind them. Mr. Reed? Marcus turned. A woman in a navy blazer with a badge clipped to her belt was walking down the dock, a small notepad in hand. Behind her was a marina's head of security, looking uneasily between them. Detective Elena Carter, Bay County Sheriff's Office, she said. I just got a call from the Coast Guard. Sounds like we all have a lot to talk about. Caroline's knees went weak, because this was no longer just an awkward HOA drama. It was evidence. It was law. It was accountability. And whatever happened next wasn't happening behind closed boardroom doors. It was happening in the light. They sat in the small marina conference room, the overhead fluorescent lights buzzing faintly. The blinds were half open, slats of sunset orange cutting across the table. Detective Carter clicked her pen and looked between them. Marcus on one side, calm but tense, hands folded. Caroline on the other, shoulders rigid, fingers twisting a napkin until it tore. The marina manager sat at the far end, silent, trying to become part of the furniture. Thank you both for staying, Carter said. I'll make this as straightforward as I can. The Coast Guard has already documented the incident and forwarded their initial notes and body cam footage to us. My job is to take statements from both of you, Mr. Reed as the registered owner and Ms. Whitfield as the individual operating the vessel. Caroline jumped in. I'm happy to explain. This has all been blown way out of... Carter held up a hand. You'll each get your turn. Let's start with Mr. Reed. She turned to Marcus. Can you walk me through when you first realized something was wrong? Marcus nodded. I flew out of town for 3 days, he began. Before I left, I locked my boat, cabin, storage, everything. Nobody had my keys except me. This afternoon, my neighbor, Tom, called me at the airport and told me my boat was gone from the slip. He recounted it steadily. The phone call, the Instagram story, the HOA's Facebook post, the Coast Guard call. He pulled up screenshots and timestamped photos Tom had sent. Carter's pen moved neat and fast. Did you give anyone permission, verbally or in writing, to use your boat while you were gone, she asked. No, Marcus said. Never. The only communication I got from the HOA this morning was an email about routine dock inspections. Nothing about using my boat, taking it out, or hosting an event on it. Has anyone from the HOA ever asked to use your boat before? She pressed. Not directly, Marcus said, but I've heard comments. What kind of comments? Carter asked. He hesitated only a second. It's nice someone like you can afford something like that, he said quietly. Or you should let the neighborhood benefit from that boat, share the wealth. Things like that. Carter's eyes sharpened. And someone like you means what, specifically? Marcus held her gaze. I'm the only black homeowner on my street. Maybe in the whole Marina Row. I'll let you interpret the rest. Caroline shifted uncomfortably, a flush creeping up her neck. Has Miss Whitfield herself said anything like that? Carter asked. Yes, Marcus said. Not those exact words. But she's hinted. How so? She's told me more than once that I should be more of a team player and offer my resources for good community, Marcus said. Meanwhile, nobody has ever asked our neighbor with the fishing yacht to share his resources. And when I asked to host a small family gathering on the dock, she gave me a 3-page list of restrictions and required a special permit. Carter scribbled more notes, then glanced at Caroline. I'll come back to that, she said. Mr. Reed, how did you feel when you saw the HOA's post using your boat for their event? He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. How would you feel, he said, if you spent years saving for something, working 2 jobs at one point, saying no to vacations, eating ramen to pay the note, then watch people who question whether you belong here smiling on it, dancing on it, acting like it's theirs? He paused. It wasn't just a boat, he added. It was a message that my ownership was optional, that my consent was a detail they could edit out. Carter's pen stopped. She met his eyes, something sympathetic flickering there. Thank you, she said. That's very clear. She turned to Caroline. Ms. Whitfield, it's your turn, she said. You're not under arrest. You're not being charged with anything today. But I need you to understand that this conversation, like the Coast Guard's, is part of an official record. Lying or intentionally omitting crucial information could have legal consequences. Do you understand? Caroline nodded stiffly. Yes. In your own words, Carter said, tell me whose idea it was to use Mr. Reed's boat for the HOA event today. There was a very long pause. Finally, Caroline spoke. It was mine, she said. Carter nodded once. Did you ask Mr. Reed for permission? Aye. Caroline's lips parted. I sent him an email about dock inspections. I figured that covered it. Did you state in that email that you would be taking his boat out on the water with multiple passengers for a social event? Carter asked, eyebrow raised. No, Caroline admitted. So again, Carter said, patient but firm, did you ask Mr. Reed for permission to use his boat? No, Caroline whispered. Did you have keys to his boat? Carter asked. Yes, she said quickly. The marina keeps a set of keys for emergencies. I'm the HOA president. I can access them. Carter's gaze flicked to the marina manager. We keep backup keys for some boats, he said nervously. In case of storms, leaks, emergencies. They're not supposed to be used without the owner's explicit consent. Did you give her the keys today? Carter asked. He swallowed. She signed them out in the log. She said she had the owner's permission. Carter looked back at Caroline. Did you? Caroline's shoulders sagged. No, she said softly. Why did you think it was acceptable to take out his boat? Carter pressed. Her tone wasn't cruel, but it cut. Caroline's eyes darted around. Because we needed a boat, she said finally. We planned a summer mixer, but the usual venue fell through. We wanted something special. The board agreed that showcasing the marina lifestyle would help with community branding. And his boat it's very visible. It's newer. It makes a statement. What kind of statement? Carter asked. That Bayshore Lakes is thriving, Caroline said. That we have high standards, attractive lifestyle, marketable amenities. And did you ever consider what statement it would make to use a homeowner's property without permission because it fit your marketing vision? Carter asked. Caroline flushed, eyes glossing with frustration. You don't understand, she burst out. Do you know how hard I've worked to maintain order here? To keep this place desirable? People complain constantly. I deal with noise complaints, trash, parking issues. I make this neighborhood run. And when I try to create something uplifting, a community event, suddenly I'm a criminal. Uplifting for who? Marcus asked quietly. She turned on him. For everyone. For everyone you decided belonged, he said. For everyone who fit your idea of what this place should look like on a brochure. You're twisting this into something it's not, she snapped. This isn't about race. Carter looked between them. No one said that word but you, Ms. Whitfield. Caroline froze. The room went very still. I'm recording that comment in my report, Carter added calmly, not because it's inherently illegal, but because it provides context. Caroline sank back in her seat, breathing hard. We're not here to determine what's in your heart, Carter said. We're here to document what you did. And what you did was take someone else's property they worked hard for, without their permission, use it for your event, and then lie about having permission when asked. I didn't lie, Caroline protested weakly. I stretched the truth. That's what lying is, Carter replied. She took a breath, then continued. Ms. Whitfield, I'm going to be honest. If Mr. Reed wants to press charges, there's a solid case for unauthorized use of a vessel, possibly more if any damage is found. At minimum, you and the HOA are open to civil liability, but I'm not the one who chooses that path. He is. She turned back to Marcus. So, she said, I need to ask, what do you want to do? The question hung in the air. It wasn't simple. It wasn't just about punishing someone. It was about what kind of man he wanted to be in the face of the disrespect he'd just experienced. Marcus stared at his folded hands for a long moment, weighing every option, every consequence. Part of him burned to say, press everything, make it hurt, make an example. But another part of him thought of a different kind of power, the power of a spotlight where things couldn't hide anymore. He finally looked up. I want accountability, he said, not just for today, for everything this represents, for the pattern. Carter nodded slowly. Accountability can look like a lot of things, she said. Criminal charges, civil action, public transparency. He nodded. Then I want all three options on the table, he said. I'll cooperate fully. I'll give a written statement. I'll hire a lawyer. And I want the HOA board to answer for this formally, in front of community. I'm done with closed-door decisions. The marina manager swallowed hard. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, Marcus said, that I'll be calling a special open meeting, and I won't be asking permission. I'll be demanding it. He turned to Caroline. You wanted to use my boat to showcase a lifestyle? He said, fine, let's showcase it. Let's show everyone exactly how you decided that my rights were flexible. Something flashed in Caroline's eyes. Panic, anger, fear, all tangled. You can't do that, she said. You don't have the authority to call special meetings. I don't need your bylaws to tell the truth, he replied calmly. But I have read your bylaws, Caroline. And I know that if 30% of homeowners sign a petition, they can force a special meeting and a vote of no confidence in the board. Her face went pale. You wouldn't, she whispered. Carter watched silently. Pen paused over her notebook. She saw it clearly. A pivot point, a moment when someone who'd been underestimated for too long stood up straighter. Watch me, Marcus said. He stood slowly, pushing his chair back. Detective Carter, I do want to press charges, he said. I want this recorded. I want this public. And I want every homeowner to know exactly how their leadership thinks about property, consent, and who they think they can walk over. Caroline inhaled sharply. This is revenge, she said. You're trying to destroy me. No, Marcus said. I'm trying to rebuild something that was always supposed to be mine. Basic respect. He turned toward the door. Where are you going? She demanded. To walk my dock, he said. To check my boat. To talk to my neighbor. To start collecting signatures. He paused at the doorway, then looked back at her. You used my boat, he said. Now I'm going to use your own rules. He stepped out into the hallway. Outside, the sky was painted in shades of fire and lavender. The Serenity bobbed gently in her slip. Scars unseen but not forgotten. As Marcus walked back toward her, people approached. Neighbors who'd watched the scene earlier in the day. Hey, man, that wasn't right. I didn't know it was your boat, she said. I've had my own issues with the HOA. If you're really calling for a meeting, I want in. He looked at their faces, different ages, different backgrounds. Some were clearly embarrassed, others angry, a few defensive. He realized something. This wasn't just his fight. It was an opening, a crack in a wall that had been quietly standing for years. He straightened. All right then, he said. If we're doing this, we're doing it together. He didn't see Caroline standing at the conference room window, watching him. A storm of thoughts roiled behind her eyes. She thought of all the times she'd pushed things a little too far, because she didn't believe anyone would really challenge her, of the complaints she'd buried, of the voices she dismissed. For the first time, she understood this wasn't going to disappear with a carefully worded email. This was going to follow her, unless she did something drastic. Her phone buzzed. An email came in from an HOA board member. From Greg Walters, subject. We need to talk. We can't defend this. You cross a line, Caroline. If Marcus calls a no-confidence vote, I can't promise I'll stand with you. She closed her eyes. The community she thought she owned was slipping away. And yet, she still wasn't ready to admit, not fully, that she'd done this to herself. Over the next week, Bayshore Lakes buzzed like a kicked hive. Whispers at mailboxes. Quiet conversations by the pool. Sideways glances when someone in a polo shirt with the HOA logo walked by. And everywhere in hands and inboxes and group chats, one thing kept appearing. Petition for special HOA meeting and vote of no confidence in current board. Marcus had stayed up late drafting it with a pro bono housing attorney recommended by a co-worker. It was calm, factual, and devastating. It listed the unauthorized use of his boat, the Coast Guard's involvement, the marina's key policy violation, the pattern of unequal policy enforcement under Caroline's leadership. It did not accuse anyone of racism directly, but it did note disparate treatment of certain homeowners based on subjective criteria inconsistent with written policy. He didn't need to say more. People could read between the lines. He started with neighbors he knew. Tom signed first, pen pressing hard enough to dent the paper. Been waiting for something like this, he said. I've watched her go after people for stupid stuff and ignore bigger issues from her friends. She picked the wrong guy to mess with this time. Word spread. People who'd had quiet conflicts with the HOA came forward. She tried to fine me for having my mother's wheelchair ramp, one woman said. Said it reduced curb appeal. I had to get my doctor to write a letter just so my mom could visit without her making a fuss. She refused to approve my shed for 6 months, another man said. Then her friend applied for the same model and got approved in a week. A young couple chimed in. We got a warning for having a kid's inflatable pool in the backyard, they said. But the board member across the way had one all summer and never got a notice. The stories piled up like kindling. Marcus listened, taking it all in. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was a culture problem. Within 4 days, he had more than 30% of homeowner signatures. Within 5, he had nearly 50. Some signed reluctantly, still scared of rocking the boat. No pun intended. Some signed eagerly. A few refused and walked away with tight-lipped expressions, loyalty to the board written in their stiff backs. He turned in the petition by email and in printed form, copying the community management company and an independent HOA mediator. They had no choice. By law, and by their own bylaws, a special meeting had to be scheduled within 21 days. They picked a date. The night of the meeting, the community center was overloaded. Folding chairs were brought in from storage. Then from the pool deck, people stood along walls. Others peered in through the open doors. At the front table sat the board. Caroline, looking carefully composed but pale. Greg, eyes downcast. 2 other board members shifting nervously. And the HOA attorney, flipping through a folder. Marcus sat in the front row, a copy of the petition in his hands. The Coast Guard report and Detective Carter's preliminary incident document in a neat folder by his feet. Detective Carter herself sat at the back, in plain clothes, technically off duty but present as a concerned community member, as she put it. She'd quietly bought a rental condo in Bayshore Lakes a month ago and had her own opinions about the way things were run. A low murmur filled the room as neighbors looked at one another, not through the usual lens of property values and landscaping standards, but through a new one. Who do we want to be? Caroline lifted the microphone. Order, she said, her voice steady but strained. This special meeting has been called pursuant to the bylaws based on a petition from homeowners. The agenda includes discussion of recent allegations against the board and a potential vote of no confidence. She cleared her throat. I'll start by saying this. I have always acted in what I believe were the best interests of the community. If mistakes were made, they were not made out of malice. A murmur rippled through the room. Tonight, she continued, we will hear from the petitioner, Mr. Marcus Reed, and any other homeowners who wish to speak. Then, if the community so chooses, we will proceed to a vote. She turned stiffly. Mr. Reed, she said, you have the floor. He stood, feeling dozens of eyes on him. The shy part of him, the one that had always preferred being behind a desk, coding quietly, mind focused on clean lines of logic, wanted to shrink. But he thought of his boat, of Caroline's hand on his wheel. He thought of his mother, who used to tell him, Baby, sometimes you don't get to choose if you're in the spotlight. You only get to choose what you do with it. He stepped up to the small podium. Good evening, he said, voice carrying better than he expected. My name is Marcus Reed. I've been a homeowner here at Bayshore Lakes for 3 years. He looked around the room. You've probably seen my boat at Docksea, he said. The Serenity. She's the one the HOA used for their party while I was out of town. The words dropped like stones. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded grimly. Some looked genuinely shocked. This was the first time they'd heard the story in full. He held up the Coast Guard report. On the afternoon of June 14th, he continued, while I was returning from a work trip, I got a call from my neighbor telling me my boat was missing from its slip. I checked social media and saw this. He tapped his phone and turned the screen toward the board. Even from a distance, the HOA's smiling party photo on his boat was recognizable. The HOA board summer mixer, hosted on my vessel, with no text, no call, no written permission, nothing. Just a vague email earlier that day about dock inspections. He paused, letting it sink in. The Coast Guard boarded my boat. He went on. They called me directly. On that call, I stated very clearly that I had not given anyone permission to use my vessel. They then returned my boat to the marina and documented the entire interaction, including Ms. Whitfield's admission that she never actually got my consent. He flipped to the second document. Detective Carter from the Bay County Sheriff's Office, he said, nodding toward the back where she sat, took our statements and confirmed that the unauthorized use of my boat potentially constitutes a criminal offense and certainly opens the HOA up to civil liability. He saw Caroline's jaw clench. But I want to be clear about something, Marcus said. This petition is not just about one afternoon on the water. It's about what that afternoon shows us about how power has been used in this community. He spoke of selective enforcement stories he'd heard. He didn't name names without permission, but he described patterns. Different rules for friends of the board, petty crackdowns on others. He shared some of his own experience. The time his small family barbecue on the dock was shut down for noise by a complaint that turned out to be from no one but an anonymous concerned resident that sounded suspiciously like Caroline herself. The 3 warnings he got for supposedly improper parking, when his car had been fully within the lines, while a board member's oversized truck jutted over them every weekend. "This isn't about me wanting revenge or drama," Marcus said. "If I wanted drama, I would have posted everything online the moment it happened. I didn't. I went through the handbook. I talked to a lawyer. I followed the process. Because that's what we've all been told to do by this very board." He paused, then looked directly at Caroline. "We've been told to respect the rules," he said. "We've been told that property rights matter, that it's our responsibility to maintain this community's standards. I believe that. I worked hard to be here. I believe in respecting what we all own and what each of us owns." He held up the report again. "What I don't believe," he said, "is that the people in charge of enforcing those rules get to break them when it suits their plans and hide behind their titles when they get caught." The room hummed with low murmurs of agreement. He took a breath, choosing his next words carefully. "And there's something else," he said. "I am the only black man with a boat at that dock. Some of you have been wonderful neighbors. Some of you have become friends. But I would be lying if I said I haven't felt looked at differently sometimes." He didn't accuse. He simply stated, "I've had strangers ask if I'm working on someone else's boat," he said. "I've had security question me more than once when I walked my own slip early in the morning. I've gotten emails that read more like warnings than friendly reminders." He looked back at Caroline. "So when the HOA took my boat without asking, without a second thought, for their photos and their party, it didn't feel like just a boundary mistake," he said. "It felt like confirmation that, to them, my ownership was negotiable, that I was lucky to be here, and they were comfortable acting like they still had the final say." He let the silence stretch. "I'm not saying anyone here is a cartoon villain," he went on. "I'm saying this. If we let this slide, we're saying that rules only apply to some of us, that some people's mistakes are brushed off as misunderstandings, while others get violation letters for leaving a trash can out an extra day." He gestured lightly to the room. "If we're really a community," he said, "then we need leaders who understand that power is stewardship, not ownership. That authority is responsibility, not a free pass." He nodded toward the table. "The petition calls for a vote of no confidence in the current HOA board," he said. "That doesn't mean we burn it all down. It means we rebuild it with transparency, accountability, and the understanding that every homeowner's rights matter, especially when they're inconvenient to respect." He stepped back from the mic. "Thank you," he said simply. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then someone started clapping. It spread, not a thunderous applause, but steady, sincere. Some stayed still, arms crossed, but many didn't. Caroline felt every clap like a slap. When the noise faded, she leaned into her microphone. "I'd like to respond," she said, voice tight. All eyes shifted. "I've dedicated 5 years of my life to this HOA," she began. "I've sacrificed weekends, evenings, my own peace of mind. I've dealt with endless complaints and entitlement, and people who don't want to follow the rules." She forced a thin smile. "Did I make a mistake with the boat?" she said. "Yes. I should have communicated more clearly. I should have gotten written permission. I've already apologized to Mr. Reed privately." "You have not," Marcus said calmly from his seat. "You've tried to negotiate. You have not apologized." She faltered. "I tried to explain," she said. "That's different," he replied. There were murmurs. She pressed on, cheeks burning. "I did what I thought was best for the community," she said. "I wanted to create an event that showcased the lifestyle we've all invested in. I misjudged how that would be perceived. But make no mistake, I have never discriminated against anyone. Every decision I've made was about preserving property values and community standards. What about when you denied my ADA ramp 3 times?" A voice called from the crowd. Heads turned. An older woman in the 4th row, sitting beside an empty wheelchair, lifted her hand. "You told me it disrupted the visual flow of the street," she said, voice steady. "My daughter had to get a lawyer before you finally backed off." "That's not relevant to," Caroline began. Another voice cut in. "Or when you find me for my kid's basketball hoop, but let your friend keep hers," a young father asked. More voices. "What about the time you told us we couldn't have our cultural holiday decorations because they weren't in line with the community aesthetic? You refused to let me repaint my door shade that was on the approved color list because you said it was too bold for this neighborhood." The room began to tilt, the narrative slipping from Caroline's grasp. In the back, Detective Carter watched without speaking, seeing something she recognized from countless cases. The moment a pattern stopped being invisible, Caroline's composure frayed. "You're all exaggerating," she said. "You don't understand how much pressure it takes to maintain order." "Order for who?" someone asked. "For everyone," she snapped. "Feels like it's been more for some than others," a neighbor said quietly. Greg, the board member and advisor, leaned toward his microphone, looking exhausted. "Caroline," he said softly, "maybe it's time to admit we got this wrong. Not just the boat, the whole approach." She stared at him, betrayal etched into every line on her face. "You too," she whispered. He met her eyes. "I was on that boat," he said. "I watched the Coast Guard pull us over. I watched Marcus's face when he walked down to that dock. If it were my boat, I'd be furious. If we stay on this board and pretend this was just a small mistake, we're lying to ourselves and everyone here." He turned to the crowd. "I'm resigning," he said, voice firming. "Effective immediately. I've been uneasy about decisions for a while. This was the last straw. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." There was a collective intake of breath. One of the other board members looked down, then raised her hand. "Me too," she said, voice shaking. I went along with things I shouldn't have. I'm not okay with how this has been run. I resign as well." All eyes went back to Caroline. She felt the floor drop out. In this moment, she saw herself, not as a dutiful protector of standards, but as a woman who'd been afraid of losing control and had tightened her grip until she hurt people. And now, that grip had slipped. She started, but the words tangled. Every explanation she'd rehearsed suddenly sounded thin. She thought, for the first time, about what it must have felt like for Marcus to see his boat on that screen. For the woman who just wanted a ramp so her mother could visit. For the families whose joy she'd measured against her own private scale of what was acceptable. There was a choice in front of her now. She could double down, or she could finally look in the mirror. "I'm not a racist," she blurted. The words sounded ugly and small. "No one called you that," Marcus said gently. "We're talking about what you did, what you kept doing, even when people said it hurt them." Her eyes filled. The room waited. Finally, she exhaled, shoulders dropping. "I'm sorry," she said. The words came out raw. Not the "I'm sorry you were offended" type of sorry. "I'm sorry for what I did. To you, Mr. Reed. To anyone who felt singled out because of decisions I made." She swallowed. "I thought I was protecting this place," she said. "But the truth is, I was protecting my idea of it. That's not the same as protecting the people in it." A few people shifted, surprised. "I'm resigning," she said quietly, effective at the end of this meeting. "I'll cooperate with any investigation or civil process. I'll help with the transition to a new board." She looked at Marcus. "And I will pay for any damage to your boat," she added. "And for legal fees you've had to incur because of this. I know I don't get to decide if that makes things right, but it's a start." A murmur worked through the crowd. This wasn't absolution, but it was movement. The HOA attorney, who'd been watching carefully, leaned toward his mic. "For the record," he said, "the resignations will be documented, and an interim committee will need to be formed to manage necessary operations until new elections can be held. The vote of no confidence can still proceed as a formal statement of the community's position." It did. When the ballots were counted an hour later, the results were overwhelming. The community had voted. No confidence in the old way of doing things. Yes to starting over. As people filtered out into the warm night, conversations buzzed. Not just about Caroline, but about what they wanted next. Transparent budgeting, clear and equal rules, diverse representation on the board. On the steps outside, Marcus leaned against a pillar, suddenly tired. Detective Carter approached, hands in her pockets. "You handle that well," she said. "I almost didn't," he admitted. "I wanted to tear into her, really make her feel it. But then what?" "Then you would have had a satisfying 10 minutes," Carter said. "And a mess after that. This way, you got something better." "What's that?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Precedent." He thought about that. "You still planning to press criminal charges?" she asked. He looked back at the half-empty ballroom, at the board table where 3 nameplates now sat with newly blank futures. "I want the file to stay open," he said. "I want it on record. But I'm more interested now in making sure the civil side plays out in a way that changes how things work here." She nodded. "You can always adjust later," she said. "The important thing is, you didn't let this get swept under the rug." He nodded. Behind him, someone called his name. "Marcus." He turned. Caroline stood a few steps away, her purse on her shoulder, eyes red but clearer. It looked like it had taken everything in her to walk over. "Can we talk?" she asked. He glanced at Carter, who gave him a small nod and stepped away, close enough to keep things safe, but far enough to give them privacy. Marcus folded his arms. "I'm not here to comfort you, if that's what you're looking for," he said. "I know," she replied. "I'm not asking you to." She took a breath. "I told myself a lot of stories about you," she said. "About who you were, about what you represented. None of them were fair. You didn't do that. I did, to make myself feel better about the power I had over people like you." He said nothing, letting her continue. "I can't undo what I did," she went on. "I can't erase today or the ramp or the hoops or any of it, but I can live with it and maybe go figure out why I needed so badly to control everything in the first place." She looked at his face, searching. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "That's not my right to ask for. But I wanted you to know that I heard you tonight. Really heard you, for the first time." He studied her. It would be so easy to dismiss this as self-preservation, as optics. Maybe some of it was. But he also saw something truer in her eyes. Someone who finally realized that "I didn't mean to" doesn't undo harm. "I hope you do that work," he said. "Not for me. For the next people you'll have power over in your life." She nodded, a small, grateful movement. "For what it's worth," she said. "Your boat's name, it's fitting." He glanced toward the dock. "Serenity?" he said. "Kind of ironic, given all this." "I don't think so," she said quietly. "You didn't get that by avoiding conflict. You got it by going through it the right way." She turned to go. "Caroline," he called. She stopped. "Yes." "If you're serious," he said, "about taking responsibility, then when a new board is formed and they start reviewing past violations, you should show up. Help them unwind the mess. Tell the truth about where you push things for personal reasons." She swallowed. "That'll make me look even worse," she said. "It will also make things right for people who don't have the energy or the resources to fight like I did," he replied. "That matters." She nodded slowly. "I'll do it," she said. "I owe them that. And you." He nodded once. She walked away into the night, smaller somehow, but maybe, finally, more honest. The marina was quiet again. Weeks had passed since the vote. New flyers had gone up around the community announcing special elections. A temporary committee, on which Marcus now served, had been formed to keep operations running. The old board was gone. Their decisions weren't. But slowly, they were being untangled. The woman with the ADA ramp got a formal apology and a policy change enshrining accessible accommodations as protected, non-negotiable rights. The family with the basketball hoop received a letter voiding all past fines and clarifying the outdoor play equipment guidelines. In plain language this time, cultural decorations were explicitly listed as welcome within basic safety guidelines. The community newsletter even featured a series called Traditions of Bayshore, highlighting different holidays and backgrounds. It wasn't perfect, but it was movement. On a warm Saturday morning, Marcus stood on the dock, a toolbox at his feet, inspecting Serenity's rail, where someone had scuffed it during the party. He ran his fingers over the newly polished section. "You're looking good again," he murmured. He'd found a few minor dings and one deeper scratch on the hull. The repair shop had done excellent work, paid for in full by a check from the former HOA board's liability coverage. He could have pushed for more money, but he'd asked them to redirect the rest into a community repair fund for shared spaces instead, under the new committee's oversight. "Pay it forward," he'd said, just this time with consent. Behind him, footsteps approached. "Hey," Tom called. "She ready for a proper, authorized ride?" Marcus grinned. "Almost," he said. "You sure your wife's okay with you ditching Saturday brunch for this?" Tom laughed. "She's bringing the kids down in an hour. They want to see the famous boat that made the HOA explode." Marcus snorted. "That's not exactly the legacy I was aiming for." "Could be worse," Tom said. "You could be known as the guy who let the HOA walk all over him." Marcus's smile faded a little. "Yeah," he said softly. "I've been that guy before. In other places." "Not anymore," Tom said. Marcus tightened one last bolt, then straightened. "You ever think," Marcus said, "that most of the time, this isn't even about boats or ramps or paint colors. It's about who's willing to speak up when something's wrong." Tom nodded. "Sometimes all it takes is one person say, 'No, actually, that's not fine.' Then other people realize they're not crazy for feeling uneasy." He glanced around. "Looks like you shook a lot of people awake," he said. "Yeah," Marcus said, "including me." He'd changed, too. The man who'd moved into Bayshore Lakes 3 years ago had been grateful but cautious, careful not to cause waves. The man standing here now knew that sometimes waves were the only way to move a stuck boat. "Hey, Captain." Marcus turned. Detective Carter stood nearby, in shorts and a T-shirt, sunglasses perched on her head. "Morning," he said. "I thought you were on shift." "Got off early," she said. "Thought I'd see if that boat of yours actually leaves the dock or just stars in HOA scandals." "You're welcome aboard," he said. "No Coast Guard escort this time, I hope." She smirked. "Not unless you start renting her out to uninvited parties." He laughed. "Any update on the case?" he asked. She nodded. "We've kept the file open, like you asked," she said. "Given the board's resignations and the civil actions, the DA is leaning toward not pursuing full criminal charges right now. But the incident is on record. The Coast Guard report, my notes, their body cam footage. It's all there. Precedent." "That word again," he said. "It's a good one," she replied. "Means the next time someone thinks about doing something similar, they'll have to consider that there's an actual trail saying, 'This was not okay.'" He nodded, feeling something settle inside him. "Thank you," he said, "for treating this like it mattered." "It did matter," she replied simply. "Not because of the dollar value of the boat. Because of what it said about who gets to say yes and no." Tom clapped his hands together. "All right, feeling circle later," he said lightly. "Right now, I want to feel the breeze before the sun melts my face." They climbed aboard. Marcus paused at the helm, hand resting on the wheel in the same spot where Caroline's had been that day. He remembered the first time he'd touched that wheel after the incident, how it felt strangely contaminated, like someone had left fingerprints on his dream. Now it felt like his again. "You know," Carter said quietly, "I've been on a lot of cases where people got hurt and nothing changed. You didn't just get justice for yourself. You changed the system." "I didn't do it alone," he said. "No," she said. "You didn't. But someone had to go first." He thought of all the signatures on the petition, all the voices that had spoken up at the meeting. Even Caroline, facing the consequences of her actions, choosing finally to help unwind some of the harm. He'd found out she'd quietly shown up at 3 follow-up committee meetings, answering questions about old decisions, letting the new group correct them, even when it made her look bad. It didn't erase what she'd done, but it meant she was learning to carry it honestly. "Ready?" Tom asked. Marcus smiled. "Yeah," he said. "Let's go." He eased the throttle forward. The Serenity glided out her slip, the marina sliding past, rows of boats, the sun glint on water, the community that was now, slowly, becoming more worthy of its name. Neighbors waved from balconies and docks. Some he knew, some he'd only ever nodded at. Today, those nods felt different, less like cautious acknowledgments and more like, we saw, we're still here, let's do better. As they cleared the no-wake zone and the open water unfurled before them, Marcus felt a lightness he hadn't felt in a long time, not because everything was perfect now, but because he'd proven something to himself. He could stand up without becoming what he hated. He could demand respect without losing his own. He could insist on accountability and still leave room for people to grow. He pointed the bow toward the horizon. You know what the wildest part of all this is? He said over the hum of the engine. What? Tom asked. I almost let it slide, Marcus said. That first moment, when I saw the photo on Instagram, there was a voice in my head that said, don't make trouble. Don't be that guy. Just let it go. Carter leaned on the rail. What changed your mind? She asked. He smiled faintly. I realized that voice wasn't protecting my peace, he said. It was protecting their comfort. The words hung in the salt air. He glanced back at the marina, shrinking behind them. Still beautiful, still flawed, but now honest about at least one of its wounds. Peace isn't pretending things are fine, he said. It's knowing you stood up when they weren't. You gonna put that on a plaque somewhere? Tom joked. Marcus laughed. Maybe I'll start with a group email, he said. We've got a lot of bylaws to rewrite. He turned his eyes forward again, the sun glinting off the waves, the boat cutting a clean path through the water. The serenity lived up to her name, not because the world was quiet, but because he'd found his voice in the noise. Somewhere back on shore, in a small townhouse now devoid of HOA binders, Caroline sat at her kitchen table, a notebook open. For the first time, she wasn't writing violation letters or policy drafts. She was writing something else. Questions, hard ones about herself. She didn't know who she'd be on the other side of the answers. But for the first time, she wanted to find out.